If you deal with depression or anxiety in your life, then you know that the only way to lessen them or to get rid of them is to change your lifestyle a bit and to develop new lifestyle practices. And this video is about 5 different lifestyle practices that I've developed in my life that have allowed me to lessen the intensity and really ultimately get rid of anxiety and depression in my life. Now, these won't work for everybody and they won't work perfectly or maybe not even as effectively for you as they do for me. But I really think that these 5 things are super beneficial, and even if you're not experiencing depression or serious anxiety, these are just good for your general mental health. So I'm gonna talk about those 5 different things, and then we'll have probably some future videos explaining each one in more detail. So don't worry if it seems like I kind of blitzed through some of these. We'll come back to it and kind of talk about the science at some point. But first, I want to talk about my own mental health struggles. I'm not going to go into tons of detail, but my story is basically that when I was in my second year of college, several years ago now, I developed a pretty serious bout of, I think what would be diagnosed as major depression. Major depression is distinct from what we often refer to as depression, and it's certainly distinct from just sadness or melancholy. Depression is a psychiatric disorder. It feels like this sort of heavy, dark presence in your life, and for many people, including me, it can kind of develop this rhythm, this like rhythmicity, where maybe you're not super depressed at certain parts of your day, but there may be some long period where you get into the spiral of depression, and often that's triggered by stress. And that was definitely the case for me. The weird thing was that, I was stressed because I was in college and had a lot of deadlines and things to do. But outside of that, it wasn't like my life was so bad. And I think that's the case for many of us who have had these kinds of struggles before, that it's not necessarily that your life is so objectively awful that some terrible tragedy happened, but it's just something is off. Something in your brain just isn't working as it should. That's really kind of how it feels. At least that's how it felt to me, that like my brain was broken. And one of the weird things I think about depression, at least for me, was that I always felt that I had to kind of justify my happiness and or justify my depression, really, because I would see all these problems in the world, all these people in third world countries struggling, not having access to clean food, clean water and food, and just living in a war-torn place or some, objectively terrible situation that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. And yet you look at your own life, living a advantaged, privileged life in the United States, and you might say to yourself, like, what's wrong with me? Why can I not be happy, even though I have, basically everything, at least compared to these people? And that really ate at me. That really made it a lot harder. I will add that I was seeing the world through a certain lens that I think is common in universities and colleges, which is sort of to see, everything that the United States has done as a kind of oppression, and to see oneself as a part of that. There is a psychological cost to telling people that they're oppressors over and over again. And I think that, that's not the only consideration, of course. What the ultimate consideration is whether the theory is true, right? Regardless of how it makes people feel. I do think that there's more room for debate than is often acknowledged. And even in university settings, it's often presented as the truth. And that is, a problem when, it's not clear exactly what the truth is. And so when you present it in this highly charged way, it can cause many people to just believe that it's true just because a professor is telling them it, and then to incorporate into their identity aspects of that lesson, like I did, seeing white people and Americans generally as oppressors, as an oppressive force. And so, I think that we should be more careful about talking to kids about this. Regardless of how difficult my life was or wasn't, the reality was that I was going through something that was psychologically very difficult. And I think that many of us experience that sort of thing near that time of our lives, between like 18 and 20, somewhere in there. And part of that has to do with our emerging from adolescence and into adulthood. We're still carrying some of these bad habits or, suboptimal habits that we developed as kids. And we take that into the rest of our lives. We take it into adulthood. We don't eat healthily. We don't take our responsibilities seriously. Many of us go down that path, and it's these little wounds. It's this sort of death by 1,000 cuts that eventually gets us and really takes a toll on our mental health. It really took me changing a number of things about my lifestyle before I actually started feeling better. And those 5 things have evolved and changed over time for me. The list I'm going to present in this video are the ones that I still use on a daily basis right now, and that I feel are indispensable to my mental health. I can go without them for a little bit, but if I go without all of them for even a day, it starts to get a little bit rocky. And, I think that is an important lesson about mental illness and mental health. For many of us, you're never really out of the woods. If you stop doing whatever it is that helps you to stay on top of your mental health, you're going to fall off. It's likely that you'll fall off and that you'll go back to the pit of where you were before. And there's always escape from that pit, but it always takes consistency, and it takes hard work and change. But when the experiences themselves of doing the practices are actually beneficial and they feel good, they're fun to do, it can make that so much easier. So here are the 5 things that I do every single day to keep myself from being depressed, to keep myself from being too anxious, and to keep extreme stress at bay. So number 1 is physical exercise. So this is, of course, one that you want to check with your doctor about if you're at all unsure whether you should be physically exercising. But most experts say that 30 minutes a day of cardiovascular exercise, running, hiking, swimming, skiing, whatever it is you do, get your heart pumping, get your body moving for 30 minutes a day. That is going to confer a lot of health benefits and mental health benefits, just boosting your mood, reducing stress. You're going to feel better. But I really think for me, exercise has also had kind of a distinct effect that I know a lot of other people notice. And that is to boost my confidence. I've always been kind of active, like doing sports as a kid, and sort of running and hiking here and there. But when I was 21, I decided I am going to exercise every single day. The first thing I started noticing was going to the gym. After a couple weeks, I started growing muscles. I started actually, having a frame or having muscles on, the skeleton that I had been for so long. And, that's not to talk down to myself or belittle who I was in the past. But the reality was that I wanted to be more muscular. I wanted to feel more physically capable and look a little better. And of course, you should always be careful with that. People can develop body dysmorphia and other issues in that area where they start seeing their body not as it is, but in some sort of distorted view. That is definitely something to avoid. But if there's little things about yourself that you want to improve, little bits about your physique that you want to be a little better, there's no shame. There's nothing wrong with feeling happy about that and getting a little bit more confidence because you put the work in. Okay, number 2 is mental exercise. So by mental exercise, I really mean challenging cognitive activity. So this can be really anything. If you are a writer, if you're into math, if you're into reading, or really any kind of creative pursuit. A lot of people do art or sculpting, and I think people think of that as kind of flowy. It's not really cognitively demanding, but it really is. I mean, doing anything creative really engages your brain and problem solving, and I just think that doing those sorts of things is really good for your brain. I mean, we know that in the long term, from longitudinal studies, that this kind of thing can help stave off cognitive decline, and including Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. So keeping your brain active by reading, by doing math problems, doing art, and really just doing anything that's cognitively challenging, I think has its own set of rewards, sort of analogous to those of physical exercise. It makes you more, rather than make you more physically fit, it makes you more mentally fit, smarter, quicker, and it has those mood boosting effects. I mean, at least for me, it does. And this may be variable from person to person, because in psychology, there is a metric known as need for cognition. So that means that some of us have kind of a higher need for that sort of challenging cognitive activity than others. And so for some people, this may be more rewarding than others, but I don't think anybody's going to argue that reading a little more or doing some, Sudoku puzzles or something to keep your mind active, even watching educational videos on YouTube can be like that. You want to engage with it. You want to not just sit there and passively absorb it, but actually engaging with it, challenging your mind. It's going to have these benefits. The other benefit of mental activity and physical activity is getting into a flow state. So when I write, I'll get into this flow state, where a flow state is kind of the state of mind where you feel that everything is going well. I mean, every move is flowing perfectly into the next, and you know what the answer to the next problem is. You can see, a few moves ahead, or at least you're zeroed in on what you're doing, and everything else melts away. Time dilates, it changes. There's this great book called The Rise of Superman. It's right here. I can't get it out of the stack, but it's by Stephen Kotler, and he's a journalist, and he talks about flow. He knows a ton about it. So look into that book, The Rise of Superman, if you want to learn more about flow. Okay, number 3, and I probably could have put this as number 1, is mindfulness meditation. So for me, meditation, specifically mindfulness, is more powerful than anything else. Perhaps not physical exercise, but it's definitely up there for reducing my stress level and keeping it down throughout the day, regardless of what happens. I can be going into the most stressful day I have, and if I meditate in the morning, the amount of just crap that I'm dealing with in my head is lowered. This is a known effect of mindfulness, that as you practice more and more, you're able to turn down the activity of the default mode network in your brain, which is responsible for kind of self-talk and all the stories that we tell ourselves. It's that network that's active when you're not doing anything in particular. It's kind of the daydreaming network in some sense. But they've also found that this network is more highly activated in people with depression and anxiety. It's overactivated. And that kind of makes sense. If we're constantly sort of talking to ourselves and telling ourselves stories and, kind of ripping into ourselves about the things we did wrong, that is going to take a toll. And it makes sense that it's going to, make some of us more depressed or more anxious. And so, that's not the only thing that mindfulness does. It can also help you deal with pain by directly interacting with brain, or directly turning down the activity of brain regions involved in producing pain. But there's other effects of mindfulness meditation. But I really think that having not just kind of the definition of mindfulness, but actually going into a kind of formal practice is hugely beneficial. I feel that I can't emphasize that enough, because a lot of people will try meditating, try mindfulness for a little bit, and they may or may not have a guided meditation, and it doesn't really go anywhere for them because they don't stick with it, or they weren't hooked by it. And it is, again, one of these things you have to stay consistent with. It's the long-term benefits. There are short-term benefits of stress reduction, but the long-term of really taking down your average stress level and just allowing you to just live less encumbered by these annoying kind of distracting thoughts. It's really powerful. So I recommend either the Waking Up app, which is made by the great Sam Harris, the neuroscientist, philosopher, hugely successful podcaster. He has developed this app and he knows what he's talking about. He is a mindfulness teacher as well as a neuroscientist. And it's just very simple. There's no nonsense. And you have, I think it's a 30-day program that you go through to start. And then you just have daily meditations after that. So that's a great app if you're interested in that. The most popular one is Headspace. They are the app that's used in most of the studies of mindfulness when they use an app. Number 4 is the Wim Hof Method. So, and I'm specifically talking about the breathing method, although I do cold showers in the morning as well. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what is the Wim Hof Method? What is that word, Wim Hof? W-I-M space H-O-F. He is a Dutch man, Wim Hof, who developed this method. It's called the Wim Hof Method, of helping people sort of optimize their mind by going through this program of kind of cold water therapy along with breathing techniques. There's other stuff involved. I don't know that much about the whole method, but what I do know is that the breathing is extremely effective. Okay, and I'm saying this as somebody who has been skeptical of sort of breath work and breathing techniques for a while. I find that often they're helpful, they calm me down, but they're not a revolutionary experience. They don't kind of launch you into this whole new world, but the Wim Hof breathing method does. It is aimed at really increasing energy and helping you to feel more energized and not kind of dragged down by the day. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it before going to sleep. I think some people do that, but I've found that it keeps me awake, kind of wires my brain up. And that makes sense because as the neuroscientist and podcaster Andrew Huberman has noted, it is all about increasing adrenaline. And so I'll just do a quick demonstration of how I do the Wim Hof breathing method. And, I would say go check out his videos. Just Google Wim Hof breathing method. You'll definitely find it. It's got 30 million views or something like that. A lot of people find it super helpful. But anyway, the idea is to breathe in very deeply and then to let go 30 times. And then on the last one, when you blow out, you hold your breath for about a minute to 90 seconds or longer if you're comfortable. So that sounds like a long time, a minute, but it really is surprising what your body can do when you put it into this state. So it kind of looks like something like this. And then I would, on that last exhale, on the 30th one, I would hold. And that seems kind of simple, but during the breathing, you'll feel kind of like agitated a little bit because you're breathing pretty fast and heavily. But then when you breathe out, you get into this calm state, and especially at the end of that state, when you breathe in, you hold for 15 seconds, and then you breathe out, and that's when you really feel the effects. So I don't want to hype it up too much, but definitely check it out. The Wim Hof breathing method is worth it if you deal with anxiety or depression at all. And if you ever want just a boost in your day, go visit the Wim Hof, the YouTube channel and just look at the comments. Like every single one is super positive. It's like the most positive comment section on YouTube. Okay, and number 5 is sleep hygiene. So this is something that I think everybody could probably benefit from, but especially for people who deal with any kind of insomnia. Some of the tips are difficult depending on what your day-to-day life looks like. So, these include things like basically not watching TV an hour or two before bed, not exercising at least 2 hours before bed, kind of going to bed and waking up at the exact same time every day, only having your bed be a place for either sleeping or sex, because anything else your mind will associate with being awake. And, I've always kind of questioned whether the idea that having sex wouldn't also make you more likely to associate your bed with being awake. But that's what the experts say, so I don't know, who am I to judge? But anyway, it's this idea of kind of associating your bed and your bedroom with sleep and only sleep. Making this schedule super regular so that your mind also associates like that time, or that your brain associates that time with sleep, and you're waking up at the same time. There's other techniques for if you are dealing with insomnia. So my recommendation for that is check out resources on cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBT-I. This has been found to be super effective. I know people who have benefited from doing CBT-I. The key, like all the things I mentioned, is you have to stick with it. Same with sleep hygiene generally. You have to sleep with it. You have to stick with it, because if you don't, any benefits you notice are likely to go away. So that goes for all 5 of these things: physical exercise, mental exercise, mindfulness meditation, the Wim Hof breathing method, and sleep hygiene. So that's basically it. I mean, I use all these practices in my daily life, but I want to know what you think. What practices? If you could list just 1 to 3 practices that you do every day that help with your mental health and help you just feel better generally, let me know what they are in the comments. I'm super excited to see that. I really want to keep this conversation going. I want this to be a community. So please don't hesitate to drop your answers below. Also, just so you know, there will be more videos like this in the future. In addition to the Introduction to Neuroscience course, which is available on our channel, we'll also be having these less formal videos that are about mental health and well-being. And if you don't want to miss those videos, be sure to click the subscribe button and the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you're notified and you never miss anything new. Also, please give this video a like, and like I said, drop below in the comments whatever practices you do that help you out in your day-to-day life.